When I was in high school, if you would have told me that I would go on to take up poetry as a vocation, I would have laughed in your face. I wasn't really interested in reading or literature, but when I was in ninth grade, I read Samuel Butler's prose translation of the Odyssey. We also watched the made-for-TV film version starring Armand Assante, which had just come out, and it was amazing. Odysseus was a guy to envy. He fights monsters and sleeps with goddesses, then when he makes it home, he kills all the traitors who tried to steal his wife, whom he remained faithful to, at least in spirit. He was just awesome. The Odyssey was completely unlike all the other boring books I had to read up to that point. And it helped that I had a really great English teacher, Mr. Jones, who brought the material alive. And that was the moment that I fell in love with epic. I've read a bunch of translations since then, so when I heard about a new translation from Emily Wilson, I got excited. Everyone was talking about it. Although it was brand new, it was already quickly replacing Fagles' translation, which had been standard in most curricula since the 90s. Wilson's is the first translation done by a woman, which is great and all. But there is also an agenda behind it. In the introduction, Wilson tells us that Odysseus' behavior is problematic. He is, quote, a liar, pirate, colonizer, deceiver, and thief, who is so often in disguise, absent, or napping, while many other people, those he owns, those he leads, suffer and die, and who directly kills so many people. Yes, Odysseus does a lot of bad things. On his way back home, he sacks a town and kills the inhabitants. He cheats on his wife, albeit against his will. There's that thing with the wooden horse where he tricked the Trojans and sacked their city. In short, Odysseus, as the most influential, cited, and riffed on character in all of world literature, is the original purveyor of toxic masculinity. As for other characters, feminist scholars have also pointed out how females in the Odyssey are stereotyped, how they're either seductive and deceptive, or faithful and submissive. So all this begs the question, what if Odysseus wasn't problematic? What if Circe and Penelope were not stereotypes? What kind of story would that be? Well, in line with this thinking, let's reimagine things in a way that considers the feelings of our more enlightened and sensitive modern attitudes. So here, for your edification, I present to you the plot of Woke Odyssey. Meet Odysseus, a super nice guy who's really working hard to better himself, express his feelings, and resolve conflict. After Achilles is killed by Paris at Troy, Odysseus comes up with the idea for the Trojan horse, but then decides against building it since it would be wrong to deceive the city's inhabitants as to his intentions. So instead, he calls for a ceasefire, citing the numerous humanitarian crimes committed against the Greeks and the Trojans' wrongful colonization of Asia Minor. Thankfully, the Trojans agree to pay reparations and favor a two-state solution. Later, when trying to get home, Odysseus makes a stop on the island of the Lotus Eaters and likes what he tastes. He decides to grow the narcotic on a mass scale and distribute it throughout Greece, making sure that the walls of all the city-states are torn down so he doesn't have to deal with the Spartan border patrol. In Book 10 on the island of Circe, Odysseus declines the witch's manipulations and doesn't agree to sleep with her, since this could be construed as rape under the burgeoning Me Too movement spreading through the Aegean. He thus allows the rest of his men to remain pigs, which is of course what they always were anyway, their new form being merely the physical manifestation of their allegorical reality. While visiting the underworld in Book 11, Odysseus uses the proper pronouns when addressing Tiresias, since the prophet spent 7 years as a woman, and even after Hera turned him back into a man, he continues to identify as transgender. In Book 12, when passing by Scylla and Charybdis, Odysseus finds some unborn babies to sacrifice to the six-headed monster, and is allowed to pass. Meanwhile, back home in Ithaca, Penelope is trying to change prevailing attitudes towards slut-shaming by sleeping with all the suitors, then playing their jealousies off against each other. When Odysseus finally returns home, he nicely asks the suitors to leave, since defending his honor could result in him being prosecuted, and he doesn't want his kingship to be defunded. The suitors don't respect his requests and kill him gleefully, then proceed to riot and tear down all the statues of gods on the island, with no consequences for their behavior. Penelope isn't that concerned about her husband's death, since she was wanting to be free of the oppressive confines of marriage anyway. She rules alone, reveling in her status as Ithaca's new girl boss, and continuing to take a string of lovers, ensuring that there will be no threats to Telemachus' succession by having multiple abortions. She preaches equality for all, while hoarding the island's resources and building numerous villas as the rest of the citizens live in poverty. Thankfully, Penelope more than compensates for her selfish hedonistic lifestyle by promoting diverse representation on the Greek stage, and commissioning women and non-Greek speaking barbarians to write new tragedies, emphasizing how terribly these marginalized groups have been treated. After years of living it up, Penelope dies of complications from syphilis, and Ithaca is conquered by barbarians. The end.